Hello and welcome to another Funny Story Friday, the series in which I retell my favorite funny epic stories from my D&D past. Today's one is Death Crew again because it's my longest running campaign. It had the most it had the most interesting moments, and I think today's story is a funny, epic, however you want to call it. This takes place shortly after they had brutalized the man named Kern, convinced him to leave Dextros, leave his home, not sell his belongings, but give all his belongings to Hugo, Dave's character, and rat out, or not rat out, but basically give more info on where Iron Solutions and Arthur Sin are. And at this point, I had kind of loosely come up with the idea of Arthur Sin as a bad guy, someone for them to, not a big bad, a big bad guy, a recurring villain. I didn't expect the session to go the way I wanted. It didn't go the way I wanted, which it rarely ever does. But basically, after interrogating Kern at the hospital where both his legs have been broken after being thrown down the stairs, which I think I said in the last one. No, that was the fall of Kern. The last one was an epic story. I'm sorry. But after Kern had been brutalized, beaten up, thrown down the stairs, all that, and by they I mean Octavian, went and interrogated him some more in the hospital and found out there's a man named Arthur Sin who leads Iron Solutions in the city of Dextros. So their next plan was to get rid of him. They got rid of Kern. Now they need to get rid of the leadership. So they try tracking him down, and there's no one in the city really named Arthur Sin. It's, if there is, he's not talked about. And they come across, I don't remember how they came across it, but some information that Iron Solutions uses orphans to transfer information and gold. So they basically, I think they set up a shop and were like, hey, it might have been Kern's shop, and they were trying to pay tribute to Arthur Sin, so they waited, and an orphan showed up saying, hey, I'm here to collect, or something to that degree. It's been a while. I don't have the best memory, so I'm just basically telling a generalized what happened. I'm not gonna, no details as far as I can tell. There's some details I remember, but like how they tracked down the orphans, I will never know. But they gave the kid the gold, and then they followed him to the more affluent district of the city, and to a manor house that was currently throwing a party. They found out that Arthur Sin lives there. So they decide they need to get inside. And I think at this point, Lee was late to the session. So he wasn't there for most of it. And they decided they were going to go in without him. Because obviously I didn't know how to play his character at the time. And they didn't want to control him and, just in case something happens. So he stayed outside as lookout. A way of getting him out of the session organically. So they go in. Octavian disguises himself as another performer, because that's what Octavian does. He disguises himself. He's a bard. He's very persuasive, very deceptive. He gets inside and he starts performing, and the crowd loves him. And then it shifts, and he starts being scary. He kind of removes the visage of I think it was a man performer. I don't remember. It was a performer, because as I've said before, Octavian is an undead, so he's a skeleton. He hides this from most people. But he decided, he decided to try and intimidate them. He started scaring all the guests, and Arthur Sin, who they realized is in a wheelchair. And not like a normal wheelchair, like a magic homebrew, like it floats and it allows him to move around as if nothing was different. And what they don't know is Arthur Sin was I believe I used something out of the D&D Beyond monster, because I have all the books, so it was a random magic user who had the spell Maze. He's freaking out because this skeleton's getting in his face, so what does he do? He casts Maze, which, if I recall the spell, it teleports the target to an unoccupied space in a maze. And they're there, I believe, for like an hour, and they can't leave. It might even be longer, but they have to find their way out or the spell ends. So they do that. Lee shows up and he takes over Mars. And they get inside and they start fighting Arthur Sin without Octavian. And Octavian, and this is the funny part, he's usually in the battle, he's, casting spells, being a nuisance, being a danger. He's just sitting in a maze. And he doesn't know what to do. So Connor just sits back and lets them handle it. If I recall correctly, they convinced Arthur Sin, before they fought him, they convinced him that they were there to exorcise the ghost, which was Octavian. So they convince him to get all the civilians out, seal the door, and they will take care of the skeleton. They're obviously lying to him, but Arthur Sin didn't have very good insight, so he failed. They started fighting. Octavian, I believe, came back because Arthur Sin was like, okay, you guys are going to help me beat the skeleton. I'll end the spell and bring him back. Octavian gets back. They start fighting Arthur Sin. It's going in their favor. So I realize Arthur Sin has a spell. He has, I believe it's Gate. It's a high-level spell that allows him to teleport. So he teleports away. He gets away. And this is where the longest arc of Death Crew starts, which is pursuing Arthur Sin and stopping Iron Solutions. Obviously, at this point, Iron Solutions is Iron Solutions was kind of thrown away. Dave came to me and he's like, hey, I want my background to be, I was a smith. I got ousted by a gang, and we were like, well, what are we going to call it? And he's like, just call it Iron Solutions. And I like the name, so I said, yeah, sure. And at that point, I was like, I can run with this. I didn't really have much of a story built. So I was like, I can take Iron Solutions and I can go places with this. And it became the overarching story all the way to the final battle. At least for now. But, So I guess today's story is kind of epic, kind of funny, very rambly, very ranty. And which is like all these videos because I just can't hold a cohesive thought. But, thanks for watching.